The Ashbringer, possibly the most known and legendary sword in World of Warcraft lore. Hello, my name is Andrew. Welcome to the first ever WoW Talk, where we cover a vast range of WoW topics. Today, we'll be covering the Ashbringer. Here's some background information about the weapon. The Ashbringer is a sword of former High Lord Mograine of the Scarlet Crusade. The blade was named after Mograine's uncanny ability to smite the undead into nothing but a pile of ash. Mograine was betrayed and murdered by his son Reynold. Mograine was reincarnated as a Death Knight by the Lich, Kel'Thuzad, and he still possesses Ashbringer as it was corrupted and transformed to Corrupted Ashbringer. Although, you may ask, who is Kel'Thuzad? Kel'Thuzad is the final boss of Naxxramas, a vanilla dungeon that held precious drops. So he's just a guy who took interest in Mograine and revived him, right? No. Kel'Thuzad also took a deep interest in the Ashbringer, which is believed to be the reason he resurrected Mograine. Now, if you played a Death Knight, it's likely you already know who Mograine is to a degree. But let's drop that. On to the next topic, the Corrupted Ashbringer. You may know people with it to this day. Maybe they have it transmogrified onto their current weapon. This sword is what is left of the actual original Ashbringer, corrupted after Mograine's death, as he was turned into a Death Knight. Although, its stats are higher than the actual Ashbringer in-game, which you can obtain using GM commands on a private server, it is lore-wise believed to be less powerful and tainted. Next, into the urban legends, so to speak, of the legendary sword. The first mention of the Ashbringer by an NPC in-game was by Caretaker Alan in the Eastern Plaguelands. He was a little unique, and said a host of random things to players who cared to chat with him, including, the what bringer? Oh, Ashbringer. Never heard of it. Stop bothering me. The mention of the item created speculation of the existence of the legendary sword in-game, and how it could be obtained. That was it for the time. Then, in patch 1.3, players were introduced to a new dungeon, Dire Maul. This dungeon introduced the Shendralar, a neutral faction of Highborn who made their home in the ruins of Dire Maul. The Shendralar were led by Prince Torthildrin, more importantly, in the library in which they had made their home, including zealots who had some interesting news for players. Has the prince recanted the tales of the Ashbringer? It is a most favorite of his stories. His favorite is the follow-up to the Ashbringer. Of course, nobody has ever gotten the tale out of him. The master holds great interest in the lair of Nefarian, if only someone would defeat the dragon and his minions and retell the tale to the prince. I bet that would loosen the prince's lips and the Ashbringer could be found. Then, suddenly, interest in the sword resurged. Although Blackwing Lair had not been implemented yet, players could still turn in Onyxia's head for valuable quest rewards. Perhaps the head of Nefarian could give away some sort of clue as to Ashbringer's location when turned into the prince. Later, in patch 1.5, battlegrounds were introduced. In Alterac Valley, players could loot dead players for random items required to summon ancient beings to defend their side. However, other items dropped as well, including Nat Pagel's Guide to Extreme Angling, a book written by Nat Pagel in Dustwallow Marsh. The flavor text reads, "This book is missing every page but the last. As far as the last page goes, it reads, and so, that's where you'll find the legendary sword of the Scarlet High Lord Ashbringer. Ain't it amazing what you run into in an ordinary day of fishing?" Then, players started fishing in random spots hoping to bring up the Ashbringer. Once more, the flurry of speculation arose, this time accompanied by fishing galore, as players assumed the Ashbringer was fished up somewhere in the Plaguelands. This was proven by players with the fact that a thoroughly read copy of Nat Pagel's Guide to Extreme Angling dropped in Dire Maul. This book wasn't readable, but surely if it mentioned the Ashbringer and Dire Maul mentioned the Ashbringer, then surely Nat Pagel knew what he was talking about, and the sword must be in a lake. But after time, players were again left with nothing to suggest that it actually existed. But, with patch 1.6 and the introduction of Blackwing Lair, suddenly it was possible to obtain the head of Nefarian. Players that were able to slay Nefarian took his head to Torthildrin, and nothing happened. No notes, no quests, no clues to the sword's whereabouts. This, however, didn't stop the speculation of the sword's whereabouts. Players worked feverishly on several theories, one of which involved two NPCs in the Western Plaguelands, both with fairly similar stories. The first was Bardu Sharpeye, a Tauren who made his home at the Bulwark that bordered Tirisfal Glades and the Western Plaguelands. Hello, I've set up camp here at the Bulwark to make preparations for my journey into the Plaguelands. I've heard a rumor that a great human wizard took up residence in Hearthglen not long ago. He was commissioned by the Scarlet Crusade to fashion their warriors and hunters with bows and guns. It's said that he completed a remarkable weapon before being slain by the Crusade. I guess the mistrust of the arcane has grown. The other NPC was a dwarf named Alexia Ironknife, found at Chillwind Camp in the southern region of Western Plaguelands. Like Bardu, she offered no quests or services, but her story was similar to the Taurens. Greetings, I have no time to talk. I'm just using Chillwind as a camp to get some rest before heading to Hearthglen. I've heard word before they went crazy, the Scarlet Crusade had a mage to make powerful bows and guns for their soldiers. I'm not sure if he succeeded or not. The Crusade killed him before any of his finished product made it out. Maybe they killed him to keep it a secret, or maybe they distrust the arcane that much. Players attempted to put two and two together and made what they thought was four. Ashbringer existed. It was created by a mage killed by the Crusade for an unknown reason, and the secret of the sword lay dead with the mage, wherever he was. Around this time, players pointed out a curious item that dropped in the Western Plaguelands, Timolane's phylactery, which dropped off a large vile slime in the Weeping Cave of Western Plaguelands. However, this slime was curious. It had a mana bar, and also had the following spells: Arcane Bolt, Arcane Explosion, and Crimson Fury. Mage attacks? Crimson Fury? Scarlet Crusade. Players leaped to the next logical conclusion. Timolane was the mage referenced by the NPCs, and somehow he died. Perhaps at the hand of the Scarlet Crusade, then raised by a necromancer, such as a lich. Let's say Kel'Thuzad. Yes, the person who revived Mograine. It all makes sense now. Well, sort of. Timolane's phylactery was unique, and bind on pickup. It didn't give any sort of quest or any flavor text to indicate its purpose. Perhaps you had to take it to the Prince in Diremall? Or to Nat Pagle. Unfortunately, all speculation was destroyed in patch 1.7, when the phylactery was simply removed from the game. Players continued to search, refusing to believe that the item referenced and hinted to for so long simply didn't exist. Eventually, a European GM admitted that the weapon was not in-game, but this admission was followed by confirmation by Ionix. Although it's true Ashbringer is not in the game, although one day in the future it will be, but not until after there is an awesome legendary item for casters. It wasn't long before players let their minds linger over thoughts of the legendary blade. Now that Legion's coming out, we'll finally be able to use our longed-for weapon, the Ashbringer. Thanks for watching me go on about this sword, but it really does fascinate me. Remember to like, comment your question or advice, and subscribe. The next one might be coming soon.